Ah, welcome, Lagomorpha, our fourth order. So we've covered a lot of ground so far. We've done the possums, we've done the shrews and the moles, and we did the bats. Today I need to talk about rabbits and hares, and I promise you there's a difference between the two of them. The difference isn't great enough to put them in different families. Rabbits and hares are both in the family Leporidae, but you will be sure to see a question either on the midterm or the final about how to tell the difference between rabbits and hares. I no longer remember why these are the three images that I selected for the opening slide here, but enjoy. Okay, you had a reading from Elbrock on Eastern Cottontail, and as usual, you should be sitting out with your note template, and you should have already written some stuff in there about that. I'm also asking you to read my blog for Eastern Cottontail. There's 8 entries, and the majority of them can be broken down into 2 things. One is tracks and trails of Eastern Cottontails, including some weird stuff like this picture right here. Look at all those tracks. This looks like an animal with 5 or 6 legs. And rabbits on the menu. Those tend to be shorter entries with a graphic twist there. Okay, maybe the most important thing that I can teach you right off the bat to help separate you from the average person, and this is something that I say in class a lot, is what we're trying to do with your education here is get you a degree, and your degree needs to be worth something, right? It can't just be, quote, a piece of paper. And so I try to look at what most people are confused about with wildlife and make sure you are not confused about that. So you should be able to, in an interview, on a resume, chatting with somebody, easily be able to tell your level of professionalism. Most people think rabbits are just rodents, okay? And they're not. We're not even in the rodent order yet. Rodentia comes next. So rabbits and rodents are completely different things. They have similar looking teeth in the front, but that's about it. That doesn't give them enough of a similarity, excuse me, for them to be linked together. Also, if you have no idea what this picture is, you have had a terrible childhood up until now. So I suggest Caddyshack be on the menu for you while we're kind of restricted in what we can do anyway. That's Caddyshack, everybody. Okay, one year in class, a student asked me how big rabbits get, and I kind of shrugged and said I have no idea. So I went home and I got on the Google machine, and apparently rabbits can get ginormous. Now, this is not the biggest rabbit by any means, but I want to show you this picture because I believe Faust talks about this in the fish half of the class, where every good fisherman learns to hold their fish as far away as they possibly can from them, so in the photograph it looks as big as possible. That's called forced perspective, and we're going to talk about it in this class a few times because it comes in play for a few species. So you put the rabbit very close to the camera. You get back as far as you can, and look how she's even crouching down to make herself look smaller. I'm not saying that's not a big rabbit. I'm just saying that's not as big a rabbit as it looks like. The world record holder, according to what I can find, is Darius. They claim that Darius is 49 pounds. And of course, having a child hold the rabbit makes the rabbit look bigger. But I don't know that you need to do anything extra with a 49-pound rabbit than just show a 49-pound rabbit. So that's pretty big. That's a large rabbit. So none of the wild rabbits get anything close to that. Of course, that's a domestic. Now we only have one species of rabbit that lives in the Finger Lakes. And maybe you've been able to get away with, until this point, just calling it a rabbit, or God forbid you call it a bunny. You need to be a little more professional in your language now. What is the actual species name? That's right. This is an Eastern Cottontail. And if you start talking to me about a rabbit that you saw, at some point I probably won't correct you and shout you down, but I'll mirror the proper language to you. So you'll say, "Hey, guess what? I saw a rabbit." And I'll say, "Cool, you saw an Eastern Cottontail. That's great." And you'll say, "Yeah, the bunny was just running around in my backyard." I said, "Oh, you had an Eastern Cottontail in your backyard." Right? Do you see how I gently nudge you along there? We will revisit this when we talk about deer and horns. Maybe you can notice that the tag up here says LVN. instead of JVN. That's my wife took this picture. I took a picture of my wife taking this picture. So sometimes people ask me what kind of gear you need to get good wildlife pictures. And certainly sometimes you can get them right up close, right? I showed you the bat picture. I took one with my cell phone. But often what you need is a camera with a telephoto lens of some sort. Even rabbits, which are fairly close, easy to approach. They let you get very close. You still need a decent sized lens in order to bring that animal to a full size there. By the way, this picture was taken in Virginia on our honeymoon. We went camping for our honeymoon because we didn't have a whole lot of money. And as you can see from this map, Virginia is right in the heart of Eastern Cottontail range. This map should look familiar to you. Not because we've seen an Eastern Cottontail map before, but because we've looked at the possum range map before. Let me help orient you. Right there, there's the Finger Lakes, okay? So we are not too far from the northernmost limit of the Eastern Cottontail here in the east. Eastern Cottontails do not like rugged winters. So most of Canada, no Eastern Cottontails. Rocky Mountains, no thank you, says the Eastern Cottontail. But it did manage to get out west, just like the possum did. And just like the possum, it was brought out west on purpose. Now, I continue to use this photo even though it doesn't have a ton of pixels, and I know Google can find me a better one. But I did inherit this from Bill Baniszewski. He took this picture actually through a screen window right in Naples, New York, where he was living. And I want to ask you the question of what is Groucho doing here? If you don't know who Groucho is, ask your grandparents. What's with the big giant grass mustache? Okay, when you see a plant eater with a mouthful of vegetation, you've got two choices. Is it storing it for food, or is it using it for nesting material? And in the case of the Eastern Cottontail, it is using it for nesting material. They don't store food. So if this rabbit wanted to eat, it would be grabbing food and swallowing it, grabbing food and swallowing it. This is gathering nesting material. And is there anybody in here that's ever actually seen a rabbit's nest? If you're raising your hand right now, probably your story starts with, one time, my dog. So our Eastern Cottontails nest either at the surface or just below the surface, right within dog digging range. This is not an Eastern Cottontail. I took this picture off the internet. I needed a picture of a rabbit in a hole. I just want to tell you that if you've watched a lot of Bugs Bunny cartoons growing up, and maybe into your adulthood, no one should be criticized for continuing to watch cartoons, you've been lied to a little bit. Like, rabbits are not great diggers. Not all of them, I should say. The Eastern Cottontail rarely digs tunnels of any sort. They really nest right on the surface. So this is not an Eastern Cottontail, and not typical of an Eastern Cottontail to be living in a hole like that. In fact, if I take you back to Bill Baniszewski's property, he found a rabbit's nest one time in his herb garden and then set a trail camera or a camera trap on a post aiming straight down. So every time mom came in, she took a selfie. And here's the babies. Look how different they look than the adult does. Okay, can you orient all this? You see her head's kind of buried in here in the vegetation. All right. If I was going to ask everybody in here to draw a rabbit, we would all be fighting over the brown crayon, right? Everybody knows rabbits are brown. But when you look at this rabbit right here, you can see she's a much more sophisticated blend of brown and black and white and tan. It's not just one solid color. Now let's look at the babies. Basically brown fur. Now I do want to point out this one down here. The hind quarter of this one, and here's the back leg, is really starting to show some more of that adult coloration there. So this is the first picture that I've got for you of baby rabbit. It's showing you that baby rabbits, and maybe you remember the baby possums that I showed you, or maybe the baby shrews that I showed you, they look very different than the adults do. I have a little hillside on my property. Our house is built on just a little rise, and we have a driveway that has one parking spot right next to the house. Guess who gets that? My wife. And then another one, the driveway forks a little bit, and then near the base of the hill is another parking spot. That's where I park. So in that little hillside, we have rabbits that den in there every single year. And some years I poke around trying to look for the den. Most of the time I just leave them be. Well, one year I went out to my truck to go to class, and I found this. So picture number one up here, you can see there's rabbit fur all over the place and an obvious hole. So I knew that a predator had found that rabbit's nest even though I had not. Now the fur actually comes from the female, but it's not fur that the animal killed the female. She plucks the fur from her belly and uses it to line her nest. That makes it a nice soft nest for the babies and also exposes her teats to make it easier for them to milk. Look how old this picture is. I'm still wearing a watch. I wanted to give you guys a sense of how deep this is. So when I tell you that rabbits don't dig tunnels, I don't mean that they don't dig at all. Our Eastern Cottontail maybe hollowed this out, and I'd call this more of a cave or a depression. My fingers are touching the back of it. You could just barely squeeze in mom and the babies into this nest. Then in picture number 3 down here, I gathered up all the fur that I could find. I just wanted to give you guys a sense of how much fur she plucks from herself. That is quite the labor of love. And then finally, I removed all the fur, and this is what it would have looked like when that predator found it. It either found it by luck, by noise, by scent, but it certainly didn't find it by sight. Those babies would have been well camouflaged in there. Here's another rabbit's nest that we found on our property. This one's in my wife's flower garden. And I want to show you how old these rabbits are. I think that we found this nest within just a couple days of them leaving the nest here. Look how they just look like miniature adults here, not like those very underdeveloped ones in Bill's garden there. Okay, there's a name for that. There's a name for when you're born underdeveloped. It's altricial. So let me pronounce it for you one more time. Altricial. And on your note sheet, you're supposed to define this word. Altricial means you're born naked, blind, and helpless. And before I forget to say it, all rabbits, every rabbit species in the world, is born altricial. And I put naked in quotes because you could be born with a little bit of hair. It's like I've used this example a couple times. We still call somebody bald even if they've got a little hair on the side of their head. And I could say that about blind too. I could put that one in quotes. Their vision is not 100%. Usually in altricial mammals, their eyes are actually closed. They're born with their eyes closed, and it takes many days before they open. And helpless really is the key term here. If you're trying to figure out if an animal is altricial or not, just think about whether it's helpless or it can move from a predator. And baby rabbits absolutely are helpless. If I can sink this concept into your head, I think it would be helpful to you. So I Googled baby rabbits in coffee cups. And this is the first image that came up. Right? Adorable. I mean, I stole this off of Pinterest. I do not have a Pinterest account. You can steal pictures off of Pinterest without a Pinterest account. Just, visually appealing, finally a picture that you can like for this class, okay? But the problem is, these aren't really babies. What did I tell you a baby rabbit looks like? I told you a baby rabbit is naked, blind, and helpless. I did not tell you a baby rabbit was adorable. So let's have a look from a website that talks about raising animals, and I'll show you a picture of what a real baby rabbit looks like. Baby rabbits look disgusting. And that's because they're naked, blind, and helpless. I mean, I don't know what you expected here. So you put that in a coffee cup, and nobody is going to ooh and ah and give you lots of likes for. But that's what a true baby is. So what are we calling these guys? Now we're back to images that I took. This was a rabbit that was right on the edge of our driveway. I want you to stop thinking of this as a baby and think of it more like a teenager, maybe a young teen, right? Maybe a tween, for example, watches Twilight movies, thinks they're good. Is that still a thing? Is that a dated reference? Can you tell how old I am now? Okay. And I want to show you one thing here. So instead of marking it, I'm just going to circle it here. Do you see that little white spot on the top of the forehead? I had a wildlife rehabilitator tell me that that white spot on top of the head is a good indicator of their age, that kind of fills into brown by the time they're about a month old. And if you had to care for orphaned rabbits, like we were doing at this nature center I worked at, you wait until that's filled in, and then they're pretty much old enough to let go. By reconceptualizing this, by thinking of this animal not as a baby anymore, but as almost on its own, then you don't feel so bad when you see it all by itself. In fact, even the little pink wrinkly ones only get to see their mother once or twice a day. That's how mom protects them. Baby rabbits can go 24 hours without milk. That's a terrible standard if you were a baby human. I don't know if any of you have any baby humans in your house right now, but they cannot go 12 hours without feeding. They can't go 24 hours without feeding. Some of them can't go 4 hours without feeding. And they should be fed as often as they need to. Baby rabbits only need to be fed once every 12 or 24 hours. So most of the time, people find rabbits and they think they're orphans, but they're actually not. Mom is just hiding in the bushes, hoping she doesn't have to replace these with a whole bunch of others that she has to make. So the DEC has an expression. You can find a poster that they've printed that says, if you care, leave them there. And this is the perfect time of year to sink that into your head because we're almost into rabbit season right now. Quick story, and then we'll move on to the next concept. I used to work at a nature center, and we used to get boxes of baby rabbits that people would bring us, well-meaning but ignorant people. And if our policy was, if we were there, when the box arrived, we would hand the box back to the people and say, no, we don't take these. You got to just put these back. Unless the story was, there's a dead rabbit in the road, or guess what our dog did. So if there was an obvious, mortality involved and these were true orphans, then we took care of them. The other way we would take care of them is if they got left for us. And it was my job to open up the nature center a couple days in the week. One day I went there and there's a box sitting on the front porch. And I open up the box, and there's a note that says, hi, we're orphans. P.S. We're not eating. And inside the box were 3 baby rabbits and the biggest carrot you've ever seen. And all I'm thinking to myself is, oh my goodness. Like, you're not even thinking, what do you think rabbits eat? It's carrots when they're babies? Have you not heard of milk? Like, they weren't even trying. They didn't even give them baby carrots, for crying out loud. So we had to make up formula. And the kids that would come for the daycare I shouldn't call it daycare, the kids that would come for the daytime programs at the nature center, the free babysitting basically, would help me feed the rabbits. And the day that I stopped having the kids help me was the day I had this little girl, she's maybe 8 or 10 years old, and she's petting this rabbit as she's bottle feeding it. And I'm thinking, I'm going to really do a good job. I'm going to really teach her a good concept here. So I said, these rabbits, they were taken from the wild, and they're going to have a harder time growing up. And she's like, I know, they're so soft. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, she's not even listening to me. So I ratcheted up another notch, and I actually say these words to an 8-year-old girl. I say, that rabbit that you've got there was stolen from its mother. How would you feel if somebody took you away from your mother and you could never see her again? Thank God the girl wasn't listening to me. She just looks at me and says, yeah, they're adorable. And so I just thought, all I'm doing is these kids helping me raise these rabbits. All I'm doing is teaching them rabbits are adorable, and you should also take your own from the wild. It's a little bit like tiger cub petting, don't you think? And if you don't know that reference, you've had a boring couple last weeks. Well, last thing that I got to tell you before we move on is it's obvious that this is a teenager. Look at him getting in trouble here, smoking dandelion in my side yard. These kids and their crazy vaping these days. What if we don't have a rabbit in front of us? What if we just have rabbit sign? Well, let's start with rabbit tracks. First, let's make sure we can see all 4 of the tracks. There's one, and there's actually 2 here. Oh, that did not work as well as I thought it was going to. But do you see that there's two tracks here blended together and then two here? So I want to ask you a question first. Is this rabbit moving up towards the top of the screen or down towards the bottom of the screen? Be honest and give yourself a real answer here. Okay, you got it in your head? Cool. Then the next question is, which are fronts and which are hinds? So normally what happens is I will get students that will tell me all four of those possibilities. Some will tell me that this is going up and that these are hinds. Some will tell me this is going up and that these are fronts. And others will tell me it's going down, and then they will hind and front these as well. Basically, most people don't know what the heck is going on with rabbit tracks. What I can tell you, though, is that this rabbit is going up, and in fact, these are hinds. Rabbits and a few other animals, when they're moving fast or at a decent clip, their fronts will land, and then their hinds will land in front of their fronts. Let me show you how that works. So here's a camera trap image from my backyard, and this is a rabbit that's moving very slowly in my backyard. It's probably just grazing. The one thing that I want you to see here mostly is these two front legs. I want you to see how they are sprawled one in front of the other. And what you can't see, but you could see in this track, is that they usually line up one right in front of the other. You cool with that? So that's how you end up with two tracks that blend together and sort of look like one in that snow there. Because this rabbit is moving so slowly, these two back legs are probably going to land maybe here, because he's really not hauling at all. But both back legs are going to move at the same time, and they are going to land next to each other, just like they did in this picture here. I have a far better picture to show you. I have a rabbit from my hedgerow that's really moving, and he looks like this. Look how uncomfortable that is. Like, that's a pretzel right there. You can see his two fronts are both still on the ground. The two rears have yet to land, but they're clearly going to land in front of the fronts. And that's how that pattern is made. And gosh, I wish I was there live to do this in person for you right in front of the class. I always make sure to wear a belt on the day that I have to demonstrate this for you. So, excuse me, if I were to ask you if this rabbit is moving to the right or the left, you should now be able to answer that. This guy is moving to the right. And now if I ask you, are these fronts or rears, you should also be able to answer. Those are fronts. Cool. Now I have two more questions to ask. Are you ready? Fast or slow? I know some of you are raising your hand and saying, could you define fast or slow for me? How fast? Sort of slow? Okay, those are your only two choices, fast or slow. If those are your only two choices, this is slow. And how I know that is the tracks are all so close to each other. Look at how the fronts are so close to the hinds. Look at how the two fronts are so close to each other. Okay? That's a slow one. Do you want to see a fast one? Yep, I will show you a fast one. But I have one more question to ask you here. The last question is fresh or old? Yes, yes, yes. Sort of fresh, kind of old. Nope, just fresh or old. Those are your only two choices. Yeah, old. And the reason for that is look how rounded everything looks. Look how everything looks like it's maybe been windswept, maybe even a little bit of melted in the sun here. Nothing looks crisp and clean and fresh. It all looks like it's just been all smoothed over. That's a characteristic of older tracks. Okay? Next one. Haha. Which direction is it moving? Same direction, moving to the right. Fast or slow? Yeah, so much faster. Look how far apart the hinds are from the fronts, right? The other clue that you have that this is moving fast is look how far the fronts are from each other. Finally, I can look at one more thing, and I promise I will go back to that last picture. Look at how the shape is different in this track. Every single toe is sprawled out. I wish you could see me talking with my hands here. Sprawled out so they can grab traction as they're hauling through the snow here. So look how delicate and pointy these tracks look. Look how sprawled and sprayed out these tracks are. Fresh or old. These are fresh. So look how crisp all the edges are. Look at how the snow that got kicked up is still visible on the top. These edges are nice and clean. These are fresh tracks. Cool. Okay. Just to put it in size perspective for you, that's my muck boot. Size 12 actually is about 12 inches long. This is just a rabbit in my backyard. And the farther apart each set of tracks are, the faster this guy's moving as well. This isn't anything special. Rabbits can jump much, much farther than this between their feet on the ground. But this guy is almost exactly a 4-foot jump right there. That's pretty good. Not quite the wingspan of an Indian flying fox, though, is it? Okay. Just a couple cool track pictures I just want to share with you since you've got the time. You're not doing anything else, are you? Would you even be able to identify these as rabbit tracks? You should now because you're seeing the pattern. But look at how worn down these are. So this is a little bit hard to explain, but when the rabbit sinks into the snow, it compresses the snow, especially along the leading edge of each one of the tracks. And when the snow gets compressed, it's packed together. When it gets packed together, it makes it harder for the wind to blow it away. So as the wind has been blowing the snow, what happens? Where the snow was compressed gets left behind. These are literally rabbit tracks that are now above the level of the snow because all the other snow got blown away except for the ones in the track. Pretty neat? I would say so. Moving fast or slow? Super slow. Moving right or left? Left. New or old? Yeah, very old. Cool. And then I wanted to show you this one. So what's cool about these tracks is here's the two hinds, plantigrade, by the way, and then here's the two fronts. So this guy is moving so slow. This is like the rabbit that I described in my lawn that was just grazing, like the fronts landed and then the rears didn't even make it past the fronts. That's how slow this guy is moving. But what I like about it is the snow was so thin that I can make out the individual toe prints. There's a toe, there's a toe, there's a toe, and here's a toe, and only one of the nails actually registered, that one right there. A lot of times an animal's nails don't register in the snow, causing for some confusion in who's who. Can you make out the track pattern here? I'm in Chile, the country, in South America, in Patagonia, so the very south part of Chile. And this is actually an introduced species. This is European hare. And this track was the one that caught my eye. And I have to tell you, it looked so big. Look at the toe of my boot. It looked so big, I really started thinking that it might be some kind of canine track. And then I saw the track next to it. And maybe if I outline it, you'll be able to see. Do you see the nail here? And then these two nails, and then this nail? I'm going to erase that, so keep your eye on those. So now I got two tracks side by side. That makes me start thinking it's a bounding animal. And then I saw this track, and I saw this track, and I knew I had a lagomorph of some sort. I hope that was worth showing you. It was worth bragging that I went to Chile, I'll tell you that much. Okay, what about rabbit urine? This guy likes to talk about pee a lot. So rabbit urine is often a strange color. It can be red, it can be orange. Oh my goodness, it can be blue. So in this case, this is probably a rabbit that was eating buckthorn on my property. I took both of these pictures about 20 yards apart. So rabbit urine color is dictated by the type of vegetation that they eat. So don't be alarmed if you start seeing this. This doesn't mean I have Smurfs and Oompa Loompas on my property. Next, what is it called when you bite brown branches? What is that vocabulary word that you need to know for the midterm for biting brown branches? Yes, browsing. So rabbit browse is very specific looking. All the books say that it's at a 45-degree angle, and it's cut very neatly because they've got chisels on top and chisels on the bottom. Cool. Sometimes they'll actually take the bark off of a tree, like they've done here on this branch here, and so they're interested in eating the green layer of bark underneath the brown bark, the cambium layer, and they're not interested in eating the wood. So that's what that looks like, and that's from a rabbit. Definitely need to know rabbit scat. Okay, so most books will say that rabbit scat is round, and they're not wrong, but they're round and a little bit flattened, like an M&M is. Do you know what I'm saying? Not a peanut M&M, just a regular M&M. You okay with that? Not the wrapper M&M, the candy M&M. Is everybody following? Why is this so difficult? So they're a little bit compressed. You can see it specifically in this one right here. This guy shows it very well. But if you were to just describe them as round, that would be fair. Hey, I took this picture over here off the internet. Do you want to know what these ridiculous Skittles looking things are? So I believe it was in Idaho, it might have been in Montana, they were doing a study of what plants were going to grow up fastest after a fire. So all the researchers went out and they had these little flags and they tied the little flags to the new shoots that came up and they numbered them and made references in their notebooks. And then they came back 2 weeks later and tons of the flags were missing. And in the article, the one researcher said, my first thought was, who would come and vandalize our study site? Like, who would come and steal our flags? And then they started finding the rabbit poop laying around with the flagging in it. So all of the new shoots were attractive for the rabbits to eat, and then the rabbits just ate the flagging as well, and you can see the flagging did not get digested. I don't know why I find that so funny, but something about poop humor, folks. Just can't beat it. It's craptastic. This is probably the greatest question that any wildlife person could ever ask. And the answer is it depends on which pellets you're looking at. So we learned plant eaters poop pellets. So we think we've got a plant eater here, but we clearly have two different plant eaters, right? These two little nuggets right here, look how round they are. Look at all these other pellets, look how oval they are. There's also a color difference here, which might be important. And there's a quantity difference. So, what am I looking at? I'm looking at rabbit scat right here. And then the rest of this, I betcha most of you guys know, is white-tailed deer. There's also an important thing to learn here as well. When rabbits poop, they poop one pellet at a time, like a Pez dispenser. When deer poop, they poop all their pellets at once, like a slot machine. So it is very typical to see a giant pile of a giant pile of deer scat, and maybe just one or two pellets from a rabbit. If you see a whole pile from a rabbit, that means that rabbit sat there for a very long time. Sorry, just got to teach you one last concept about rabbits, and it's this vocabulary word here. It's pronounced coprophagy. Phage might be a word that you could learn. You have a tube in your body that moves food from your mouth to your stomach. It begins with an E, and we pronounce it esophagus. But you could just as easily pronounce it esophagus. Phage means to eat, and that's your food tube. Coprophagy means to eat scat. Rabbits do it. The pellets that you see in front of you have been through that rabbit twice. The rabbit ate the food came out the other end, the rabbit ate the pellets directly from its own anus, and then that pellet goes through the whole body a second time and comes out looking like what you see here. All rabbit pellets that you find in the field have rode the roller coaster twice. Okay? What they're re-ingesting are called cecal pellets. The cecum is a part of the intestine. And the issue here is that there's not enough digestion going on for one pass through and getting all the nutrients that you need. I have read that rabbits will be vitamin deficient, pet rabbits, if you don't let them re-eat their own pellets. They pass those cecal pellets about 4 or 8 hours after they've eaten. Now, immediately, I can tell you that coprophagy would not work with my feeding style. So here's when I eat, typically. You ready? I eat when I'm hungry. I eat when I'm bored. I eat when I'm nervous. I eat when the food is free. So I'm constantly eating. You can't get a body like mine by just laying around. You got to lay around and eat too much. So rabbits don't do that. Rabbits are more disciplined. A rabbit will go out, have a feeding bout, and then will go and hide, terrified that something's going to come and eat it. And then the next bowel movement it has after a feeding bout is going to be a cecal pellet. That's how that works. Some books call it refection. I wish they would just come up with one word and everybody just agrees to it. Okay? But that isn't how it works. And I got to tell you, so other animals will do this for a variety of reasons. So beaver do this for the exact same reason that rabbits do it, because there's still some goodness in there. There's a lot of nutrition still left in that poop. Okay, your dog does it because your dog's just disgusting, right? Do you have a dog and a cat? Does your dog think that your cat is a Tootsie Roll maker, right? Just gross. I have to tell you an honest story. So this morning, my wife and I went for a hike to Howland's Island. It's a piece of state property near our house, and a horse trailer pulled up just before us. And as they're unloading the horses are pooping, and the dog comes running over and starts eating the horse poop. And all I can think of is one more reason why I'm not a dog owner, right? And to watch people let dogs lick their faces just drives me absolutely crazy. Yeah, if you own a dog, that's your own business. All right, almost done, folks. Thanks for hanging in there. So let's make sure we know what a basic Lagomorph skull looks like. I took this picture off of the internet, and I'm going to key in on the main ingredients to you in just a moment. But I do want to remind you that this is our typical herbivore tooth pattern. Do you remember? You've got scrapers in the front, and then that big gap, the diastema, and then you've got grinders in the back. So already just looking at this, even if I didn't know this was a Lagomorph skull, I'd know that that's a plant eater tooth pattern. The one key thing that we can say about every Lagomorph on the planet is they have 4 upper incisors. That's huge. That's the most important thing you need to know about Lagomorphs. They have 4 upper incisors. And if you're thinking of all 4 in a row, I don't blame you because that's how teeth normally grow, right? But that's not what happens in rabbits. So I want to make sure you've got this oriented properly. There's the nose. That just does not look good, so we're erasing that. The rabbit's facing in this direction. How's that? That better? And here's those front incisors that you would see. And then here are the back incisors. 2 little pegs behind those front ones. Do you remember Peg? She was in your class. She dropped the class about the second week. You don't remember Peg? She sat in the front row. The girl with the wooden leg. Peg. You don't remember her? She had the sister with the glass eye. Crystal. You don't remember those girls? Okay. The peg back here looks like a little chopping block, and that's exactly what it is. Imagine the lower incisors coming up and sitting right into here, and it's like an axe to a tree stump, and they use that to cut easily. Cool. There's another little concept that I want to teach you, another vocabulary word, and that's fenestration. So first, can we prove that we're looking at a Lagomorph? Absolutely. Look at those little peg teeth behind there. Do you want me to go through those jokes again? Were they funny the first time? And the fenestration refers to this part of the skull, this giant spider webbing or lattice work, if you will. That's found in every single Lagomorph. So the reason I bring that up is this. I'm so sorry to go backwards on you. When I look at this skull, and let's say that I was going to put this on the test for you. When you look at this picture, before you even hone in on any little details, my goodness, that fenestration just stands out to you. If you find one in the woods, somebody hands you one and says, "What's this?" You can see that fenestration from so far away and say, "Aha, well, that's got to be a rabbit or a hare." By the way, biologists think that that evolved because it makes the skull lighter, but still stays strong. It's like putting up the studs without putting the drywall on it. And it allows the rabbit or hare to be cooler because the blood vessels can get closer to the surface and the rabbit won't overheat as fast. That's the theory anyway. We're going to look at one rabbit, Eastern Cottontail, and we're going to look at one hare, the Snowshoe Hare. And I'd like to just teach you how to tell those two skulls apart. We'll maybe review this one more time before the midterm. Hint, hint. So I took all these pictures off of a website called Animal Diversity. Here's the nose. You can see the back of the head here. And then I tried to line them up to make them exactly the same size, so that would be helpful to you. What we want to look at is just this part right here. So I took that and I just magnified it and shot it over here, right? Same with this guy. You can see he's got a little label tied to his cheekbone, and looky, looky, there it is over there. So what we want to focus on is the bone above the eye. The bone above the eye. On a cottontail, it touches the skull. And on a snowshoe hare, it does not. So do you want to learn my Dr. Seuss way to remember this? On a cottontail, it's connected. And on a snowshoe, it's separate. And that's how I remember it. It's really easy to see. If I get rid of my stupid red ink here, there you go. Look at those. Look at those separations there. So easy to tell. It's the bone above the eye. Is it connected or not? That would tell these apart. But guys, I have to tell you, if I do give you a picture of this on the test, you would get partial credit if you just knew that it was one of the Lagomorphs. Okay? Cool. Just two bonus cottontails for you. When I was in Texas a few years ago, I got to see and photograph some desert cottontails. Would you look at the gigantic ears on this guy? Right? Again, they're certainly going to be helpful for hearing. I was going to say getting satellite reception, but really they are really good for hearing. But the biggest reason they have those big ears is to cool themselves down, so the blood vessels can radiate that heat right out of their body. And then I also wanted to point out a marsh rabbit. I took this picture in the Everglades National Park. Look how small their ears are. This is a rabbit that's tiny, has a very wedge-shaped head to it, and little itty-bitty ears. So we've got some diversity among our rabbits. You don't need to know either of those for the test. Consider them bonus creatures. All right. Maybe you want to take a break. Maybe you want to dive right into our very next video, which will be on snowshoe hares.